Good morning, my friends. Let's begin with a chant of Yogananda's. This is "O God Beautiful," which is one of his very famous chants that he chanted, I believe, for 3 hours at Carnegie Hall. And during that time, people came and had transformative experiences, even miraculous healings with this chant by going so deep into its ecstatic vibration. And those sorts of stories really intrigue me because on one level, as a trained musician, I can look at this piece of music and say, it's so simple. Its melody is so short, it's so repetitive. How can it have so much power? Because I've played Bach cello suites that have 100 times as many notes and is way more elaborate, and cello concertos that I have to hack away at for months or years to be able to play. And then this song can be learned by anyone in 5 minutes. And so how does it contain so much power? Because I think it contains that power because it draws us towards God, and because it was made by an avatar and chanted by that avatar for the sole purpose of bringing us to an experience of God. And so as we chant this chant, let's try and tune into its vibrational gift, which I believe Yogananda said was to teach us to be able to see God's presence in everything, in nature and in all the divine uplifting qualities in mankind. Doesn't that sound wonderful? So let's chant it with that in mind, hoping to draw to ourselves a deeper experience of seeing God everywhere and in everything. O God beautiful, O God beautiful, O God beautiful, O God beautiful, at thy feet, oh, I do bow. At thy feet, oh, I do bow. Oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful, oh God beautiful. In the forest thou art green, in the forest thou art green, in the mountain thou art high, in the mountain thou art high, in the river thou art restless, in the river thou art restless, in the ocean thou art grave, in the ocean thou art grave. O God beautiful, O God beautiful, O God beautiful, O God beautiful, at thy feet, oh, I do bow. At thy feet, oh, I do bow. O God beautiful, O God beautiful, O God beautiful, O God beautiful, to the serviceful thou art service, to the serviceful thou art service, to the lover thou art love, to the lover thou art love, to lover, thou art love. To the lover, thou art love. To the sorrowful, thou art sympathy. To the sorrowful, thou art sympathy. To the yogi, thou art bliss. To the yogi, thou art bliss. O God beautiful, 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 O God beautiful. Please pray with me. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, dearest friend, our beloved God, great masters of Kriya Yoga, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar, beloved Guru Paramahansa Yogananda, saints of all religions, our friend Swami Kriyananda, we bow before you all. O Divine Mother, open our eyes to your living presence at the heart of all creation. Open our hearts to the essence of your love within all of us. Guide us home into your immortal arms until at last we see only thee. Om, peace. Amen. Let's listen to this week's Whispers from Eternity. Whispers number 128. I beheld thee hiding behind the flowers. I looked at a flower and prayed. Suddenly, O Father, I beheld thee hiding there. It exuded to me the perfume of thy presence. I saw the blush of thy purity coloring its petals. It was the gold of thy wisdom that shone in its heart. Thine all-embracing, upholding power filled its delicate calyx. The mystery of life and immortality lay in the pollen, lifted by the bee when it tasted thy sweetness. O teach me thy wonders of creation, which are hinted at even in the tiniest roadside weed. Wonderful. Isn't that just beautiful? Teach me the mysteries of thy creation, which are hinted at even in the merest roadside weed. One of my favorite things to ponder on the spiritual path is that whatever is universally true manifests itself in the largest macrocosm and in the tiniest microcosm. And that truth is eternal. Truth is true no matter in what scope it's manifested. And so we can see God when we look at a flower, and we can see God when we look at the mighty mountain, or when we hear the lightning strike in the distance. And we can see God in the smile of our friends, and in the sorrow of compassion, and in the laughter of a child, and so on and so forth, as that beautiful chant, O God, beautiful, declared, that we can feel God flowing through us in servicefulness, and that, truthfully, every single thing in this world is just a symbol, is just an opportunity, a thread for us to begin pulling on, to unravel this reality into revealing the divine splendor behind all things. Now, it's interesting, Yogananda said, I believe it's in the How to Be Happy All the Time book, that Yogananda said we should all have a little education and understanding in a very wide variety of topics. And I think he referenced botany, biology, astronomy, geology, like a whole wide variety of different sciences. And that may seem a little odd at first, but science is just the practice of observing the natural world. And if we look at observing the natural world as observing God playing in the natural world, it can help reveal God's splendor to us. When we look at the natural world thinking that it in itself is the only reality, then it can draw us into deeper confusion. But when we look at the world as a symbol for something so much greater, as a mystic invitation to remember who we really are, then all the world becomes like a dancing ballet of God's drama, of God's beauty, whispering messages to us. And this is like what the Native American spirituality was very grounded in, was in this communion with God in nature. So there's a strong current of this that flows through America. And if you tune into that vibration, you can feel it in the very soil here. As a matter of fact, I often go to Yosemite National Park, which was the summer stomping grounds of a particular Native American tribe, though I'm not sure which. And I have been struck over the years to discover very sacred places in that park, where it feels like these are temples dedicated to the divine. But their chapels are not made out of marble and stained glass, but their walls are constructed of trees that are hundreds of years old, and that their steeples are made out of the spiring granite rocks, and that the stained glass windows are the evening and morning sunsets and the alpenglow that spreads pink and purple hues as far as the eye can see. It's magnificent. It just makes you drop your jaw in wonder at God's creation. I love watching the sunsets in Yosemite National Park because it feels like you have a front row seat at an impromptu, improvisational painting from the hand of Divine Mother. And she paints the horizon in so many different colors to express her creativity and her joy at the dance of light. And then it also is to teach us to be totally unattached, and to see that even light then fades into darkness. But then out of that darkness springs, to me, what are some of the most beautiful things of all, the stars. The twinkling, beautiful, distant stars. And watching the stars up there in those mountains when there's no pollution is so mystifying. That you step outside late at night and you gaze up at the sky and you swim in a sea of billions of stars, and you can see the Milky Way dancing before you. And it's incredible when you begin to see nature in this way. And Swami Kriyananda wrote music dedicated to seeing God in nature. One of my favorites is the invocation to the woodland devas. You devas of woodland, of mountain and field, come join us in blessing this night. And that there are high astral entities that are in charge of bringing divinity and beauty into the world through these channels, as Swami wrote in another one of his songs, Channels, where he describes that birds, trees, mountains, flowers, stars, rivers are all channels of different expressions of God's consciousness, and that if we tuned into them, they would reveal currents of super consciousness to ourselves, and that we would become inspired and enlightened through that instrumentality. And I found some deep inspiration in tuning into some of those channels. I mean, maybe you can guess, I practice and love astrology. That's one of the channels that Swami describes. Stars send a message of light through eternity. Lord, when in darkness your radiance we see. Isn't that beautiful? Those are the lyrics that Swami writes to that passage, Stars. But it all ties back to this Whispers from Eternity. Teach me thy mysteries of life, which can be revealed in even the humblest roadside weed. That God is present everywhere, both in the infinitesimal and in the infinite. That, as one of my favorite lines in another one of Swami's pieces of music says, foolish we, if we limit him, every atom is his throne. Isn't that magnificent? To think that every atom is God's throne, and that all we have to do is sort of peek behind the veil to see him hiding there. And so it's fascinating that Master said to build a working understanding of this world, because then we can peek behind the veil and see God hiding there. But if we don't even understand how anything works on even a superficial level, then in our own ignorance we don't see God's splendor and his creative genius. But interestingly too, to balance that, Yogananda said you could spend an entire lifetime studying algae off the coast of Japan. And he said after that entire lifetime of studying algae, or I'm sure it was algae, it was something, seemingly uninteresting. And he said after spending an entire lifetime, you still would not know everything there is about algae. But if you get to know God, he can tell you everything you want to know about everything, because he's the architect who made the whole show. He's the essence of all creation. But we can use this creation as like a thread to get back to him, if we are able to tune into that medium. And for some people it's flowers, for some people it's trees, some people it's music, and some people it's dance. All of these things are just roads back home to our experience of the infinite. But nature is a profoundly powerful channel of divine harmony, and that if you quiet your heart and become receptive to it, it can be very, very transformative. And if you've never experienced Bharat Cornell's series of learning, or not series, but practice of learning called Sharing Nature, it's really incredible, and it focuses mostly on this. It focuses on calming your mind, piquing your attention, and then giving you an experience of God through nature. And I've had some incredible experiences using those techniques and also helping guide other people through those techniques. And even now to this day, I can remember them very, very clearly. But they don't come by passive inattention. They come through raising our energy and asking the mystic question, God, reveal yourself to me in the wonder of your creation. And that ties in exactly to the first line of this prayer, which is, I looked at a flower and prayed. That's it. And I think this is the mystic key to unlock the rest of the experience of this prayer, is we can't just look at a flower. We have to look at that flower and pray. We have to ask God, reveal yourself to me. That's one of the great prayers that Yogananda gave to deepen our attunement with God and to draw him to us, is in meditation, to, after practicing the techniques and going deep into ourselves, to call out to God, reveal thyself, or to call out to our Guru, visualizing him at the spiritual eye. And we can do that too in everything. We can look at that flower and cry out to God, reveal thyself. We can look at the face of our friends, at the face of our loved ones, and say, reveal thyself in the kindness of this friendship. Reveal thyself in the love of true lovers. Reveal thyself in the love I feel for my parents, and so on and so forth. And if you ask, he just might show you. Because Yogananda said humorously once that God has a, what's the right word? Inferiority complex. That he is master of the universe, but he doesn't want to impose himself. He doesn't want to come unless you really ask for him to come. And so just imagine that God is like a little bit shy, and that you have to ask, why don't you come, join me, show me yourself, reveal your presence through these things. And then he can begin to lift the veil and show you his splendor and show you his play. He can, if you invite him in, he'll invite you in. So the first line, I looked at a flower and prayed. Suddenly, O Father, I beheld thee hiding there. It exuded to me the perfume of thy presence. I saw the blush of thy purity coloring its petals. It was the gold of thy wisdom that shone in its heart. Thine all-embracing, upholding power filled its delicate calyx. The mystery of life and immortality lay in the pollen. lifted by the bee when it tasted thy sweetness. Oh, teach me thy wonders of creation, which are hinted at even in the tiniest roadside weed. I couldn't help but just read the whole thing. It's so beautiful, isn't it? Just a vocab word here, calyx, C-A-L-Y-X, would be a great hangman word if you're ever in need. But I had to look that one up. But the calyx, which he uses in this sentence, he says, thine all-embracing, upholding power filled its delicate calyx. And the calyx is the part of the flower that holds the blossom. It's that little green throne that like begins to expand and just nestles in its palm the flower itself, like all of its petals, and then the rest of the heart of the flower. And I thought that was so beautiful to think about. Thine all-embracing, upholding power filled its delicate calyx. What a beautiful juxtaposition, that the tremendous power of God, which sustains the sun and keeps all the planets in sway, is also perfectly present inside this delicate calyx that it's supporting and holding and giving the power that this flower needs to survive and to perform its dharma. And we are like that too. Thine all-embracing, upholding power fills my delicate heart. Doesn't it? How else do we continue to breathe? For our hearts to beat, to drive blood through our veins, to give us consciousness. It's thine all-bracing, upholding power that fills my delicate little form. And when we begin to see that in the flower, we begin to feel that in ourselves. And then what an incredible revelation that becomes. And then that is, as one of my favorite lines in Swami's oratorio, that brings us to the revelation, know that you live not alone. Know that you live not alone, that God is forever with you. God is forever supporting you in His all-embracing and upholding power. That just like He animates the flowers and gives them life, He animates you too. And if we could just relax away from our ego involvement and realize that there is that all-embracing, upholding power animating us, how free we would be. How courageous we would be, how lion-like we would be, and our confidence in God. I don't know, but it's wonderful to contemplate. I'm just amazed at this prayer and at some of the experiences that God has given me in nature, that if you really ask, the divine will reveal itself. Again, in Yosemite, I was amazed to discover this incredible transformation from seeing something in a mundane light into a mystical light. And that was when I traversed the famous mountain Clouds Rest in Yosemite National Park. And perhaps some of you have been over the mountain, and if you haven't, I recommend it. It's an incredible peak. But it's very famous in the park because it is very high, and it has one of the most panoramic, prominent views of the entire park. And from that position, you can see the famous Yosemite Valley, El Capitan, you can see Half Dome, you can see Glacier Point, and then expanding in a 365-degree panorama, you can see almost all of the famous peaks and valleys and rivers in the national park. It's just phenomenal. And that mountain is very traversed throughout the day. And very often when I was younger, we would hike up, we'd spend 30 minutes at the peak looking at all the different things, and then we would hike down and we'd continue our journey and we'd go camp in the valley below. But then just a few years ago, we decided to do something a little adventurous, which is to actually camp on the shoulder of that high mountain peak. And the problem is there's no water, so I actually had to carry all of our party's water up, which was a tapasya, but a joyful one. And so because of that, we got to spend a lot more time on that mountain than I ever had before. And during the day, I sat on that mountain and I observed the view and I felt its beauty, but it was veiled under this like sheath of normality. That tourists would come, tourists would go, people would take pictures, they'd take selfies, you know, they'd gaze at the view, they'd say a few words of wonderment, and then they'd walk away. And I watched all this, and I watched people come, and I saw the traffic come and go, come and go, come and go. And I felt like as I was watching these people that they were all missing something. And I couldn't put my finger on what, but it was like they came to the mountain, they saw the view, but they did not commune. That their heart wasn't engaged. And this is exactly what sharing nature tries to teach, is it tries to teach you to engage with nature and to engage in life with your heart. Because the heart is what understands, not the mind. And so I watched these people do this, and I didn't have the revelation at that point, but I could feel that something was missing. And I could feel that something was missing within myself. I was sitting there thinking, why is this not a more profound experience? It feels rather normal. But then, because of being able to camp near the top of the mountain, when night fell, I watched the sunset from the top of that mountain peak. And suddenly there was nobody else there because they had all gone home. And I suddenly found myself alone on that isolated mountain peak with a few of my family members, and we watched the sun set. And because we were so high and so prominent, the sunset lasted about 45 minutes, this dance of light and shadow and color. And then as soon as the sun began to set, we could already see the twinkling stars in the dome of heaven begin to reveal themselves. And like I said, the alpenglow turned all the mountains different colors throughout. But the real transformation happened when the sun completely dropped away and we were enveloped in the blanket of darkness, watched over only by the stars and the galaxies above. And suddenly in that moment, as my brother put it so poetically, he suddenly realized that it transformed from being a mountain into being a shrine. And the vibration changed because all the people had gone and all the restlessness had gone, and suddenly the mountain revealed itself to us. He revealed himself as being a temple of the Lord's presence. And suddenly I could feel that stillness steal over me. I could feel the expansion of the mountain, that grounded rootedness of the spine and the aspiration for the heavens. And I just could feel myself expanding. And more importantly, I actually could commune with that point in nature. And it was so beautiful and gave me such a profound experience of God's beauty, and of that I felt like I really took away a sincere blessing from that mountain because I actually perceived it as it truly was, or perhaps closer to as it truly was. And so, for all of us, let's try to live more in this way. Let's try to see beyond just the outward facade of the world, and let's see with the eyes of the curiosity of a divine child, that we're always trying to play hide and go seek with our Heavenly Father, with our Divine Mother, to find their beloved presence hiding there. I'll read this one more time in conclusion. I looked at a flower and prayed. Suddenly, O Father, I beheld thee hiding there. It exuded to me the perfume of thy presence. I saw the blush of thy purity coloring its petals. It was the gold of thy wisdom that shone in its heart. Thine all-embracing, upholding power filled its delicate calyx. The mystery of life and immortality lay in the pollen, lifted by the bee when it tasted thy sweetness. O teach me thy wonders of creation, which are hinted at even in the tiniest roadside weed. God bless you, my friends.